All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour, where the leaders of the Quad will be holding their first ever meeting. And this, of course, includes nations such as the United States, Australia, Japan and India. And this is the first ever meeting that's been planned. The leaders of the Quad nations are all set to be holding their first meeting in a short while, although no time schedule has been given as of now. The meeting will see US President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and also Japan's Yoshihide Suga taking part in it. The Australian Prime Minister has confirmed the plan of the meeting, saying that he's actually looking forward to the first gathering of the Quad leaders.
I am looking forward to that first gathering of the Quad leaders. It'll be the first ever such gathering. I've already had bilateral discussions about this with Narendra Modi and Yoshihide Suga, the Prime Minister of Japan, and of course the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. And we're looking forward to those discussions and follow-up face-to-face meetings as well. This will become a feature of Indo-Pacific engagement.
Last month, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had held a virtual meeting with his Australian, Japanese and Indian counterparts. The Quad grouping is being seen as a part of efforts to balance China's growing military and economic power in the Indo-Pacific region. Coordinating efforts on COVID-19 response as well as climate change is also on the agenda. The first Quad meet was held in 2019 in New York, where each country had released statements that cleared that they had their reasons for staking claims in the region. China's aggressive behavior in the region has significantly abetted the group to grow in purpose, intention, shape and structure. Japan hosted an in-person meeting of the Quad foreign ministers in October last year. The four nations also held their largest joint naval exercise in over a decade. The Biden and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi agreed in a telephone call last week to strengthen the Indo-Pacific security through the Quad. The Biden administration has continued its tough approach, and China and the grouping of the four major Indo-Pacific nations will boost this narrative. All right, now to give us more information in terms of this first ever meeting of the Quad leaders, we're joined in by WION Siddhant Sibal, who's joining us live on the broadcast. Siddhant, this is an interesting development. The leaders of the Quad nations will be meeting for the very first time.
Well, yes, Mohammed, this is one of the most significant developments of this year. The Quad leaders coming together. Now it is confirmed, because just a few years ago, or perhaps a few months ago, nobody could have imagined that Quad leaders coming together. One of the biggest hitches was the fact that India wasn't very keen, given the fact that India is the only Quad member that shares land boundary with China. And China, of course, is very suspicious, not only about the Indo-Pacific concept, but also about Quad. We know that China has been terming Quad as the Asian NATO. This is something that the Quad grouping has dismissed. But if you look at the journey of Quad since 2004, it has come a long way, because Quad basically emerged after the 2004 tsunami that struck the Indian Ocean region. That time, all these four countries, US, India, Australia and Japan, came together and provided humanitarian help to the countries in the region. And then, of course, this idea was officially mooted by the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2007. But there was hitch that time by the Australians. The then Australian Prime Minister wasn't keen, and then again the idea flopped. Then again the idea picked up in 2017 when the Quad leaders met on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Philippines. And then we saw the steam gathering. We have seen three foreign ministers meeting, conversation, talks happening, which you of course have pointed out, whether it is the New York meeting in 2019, the in-person meeting amid the COVID pandemic last year in Tokyo, and now of course just last month, the telephonic conversation of all the Quad foreign ministers. And this just coming in the backdrop of US President Joe Biden taking charge in January, because many were in fact questioning that whether Washington will be keen on Quad, whether Washington will be less hot on Beijing. But if we look at the policies of Joe Biden and Donald Trump, of course, Joe Biden has reversed number of policies of the former US President Donald Trump. But one of the policy that has stood out is Indo-Pacific and Quad. He has gone full steam ahead on Quad, and the meeting, of course, is something that is not going to only raise eyebrows in Beijing, but it will be a shocker for Beijing. There is, of course, no reaction so far from Beijing, but I do expect some kind of reaction coming from India later today when the weekly MEA briefing takes place at 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time here in Delhi.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. And now this, of course, is going to be the first ever meeting of the Quad leaders where they'll be coming together. But the question that a lot of people are asking is, all four nations, Australia, Japan, India and the United States, have a very close trade relations with China. With that in mind, and also keeping in mind that trade is such an important part of foreign diplomacy, with that in mind, how successful can Quad really be in taking on China?
Well, rightly said, when it comes to the Quad member countries, they have close trading relationship with China, and something that, of course, India has been trying to change. We know after the Galwan incident, India has been trying to bring a long-term change in that policy, trying to make sure that there is scrutiny when it comes to Chinese investment, giving preference to investors from Japan. We know that there are more Japanese investors here in India now. In fact, many of the Japanese projects are in India's northeast. Just yesterday, the Indian External Affairs Minister, when he was in Dhaka, while speaking alongside the Bangladeshi Foreign Minister, he talked about how Japan can be a third country which can partner in the Bay of Bengal region for connectivity. So there is a tacit reversal in that stance. We know that tacitly more countries are engaging amongst themselves. In fact, there was a meeting of Japan, Australia and India for supply chain, making sure that there is alternate supply chains when it comes to the COVID pandemic, how it had devastated the supply chain and there was excessive dependency on China. So there is a thought process existing there, but it will of course take time. But as of now, as the Australian Prime Minister pointed out, that this grouping will not have a secretariat, it will not have much of bureaucracy, it will be four leaders coming together and talking freely, frankly about the issues concerning the region, about issues of course which have generated by the Chinese leadership when it comes to the sovereignty of countries. So if you look at the statement made by the Australian Prime Minister, that was significant, not only by referring that there will be a Quad meeting, but also talking about that this will be a permanent feature. In fact, most of the details were given by him. There was, of course, a whiff that there will be a meeting that will take place. The Japanese media was the first media to break the information in the month of February, but there was no confirmation. Now, of course, the Australian Prime Minister has given an official confirmation, and I do expect the Japanese, the Indians, and of course the Americans to follow suit.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Siddhant Sibal, for joining us and getting us all those updates. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.